3 bone-chilling true stories of home intrusions that haunt today at midnight. There are moments that freeze your heart, moments when the very air around you seems to shiver with unspoken fears. Tonight, we delve into a realm where safety feels like a distant memory, a place where the walls that protect us can easily transform into silent witnesses of bone-chilling terror. Imagine the sudden creak of a floorboard behind you, the eerie whisper of cold air chilling your spine, and the overwhelming dread that seeps in when you realize you're not alone. These are not just stories, they are harrowing truths, reminders of what lurks in the shadows. In a quiet suburban neighborhood, a family awoke to their worst nightmare. It started as a typical night. The kids were tucked in bed, dreams dancing in their heads, while the parents settled down to catch a movie. But then, a soft thud echoed through the dimly lit house, like a ghostly knock at the door of their sanity. They brushed it off, but dread hung heavy in the air. Minutes later, the unmistakable sound of footsteps crept up the staircase. Heartbeats quickened, eyes widened, terror gripped them like a vice. They could feel the cold sweat trickling down their backs as they huddled together, wondering who or what had invaded their home. The incident didn't end there, it took a cruel twist. The family discovered later that their intruder had left a chilling mark behind, a single key dangling from the front door, knowing they'd return. How did they know? The tightly coiled springs of disbelief turned into fear. The question burned in their minds, as unwanted as a splinter: who were they? What did they want? And now, what steps would they take to keep their fortress safe? Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. Now, let us navigate to another harrowing account. Picture a single woman living alone in a quaint apartment, oblivious to the shadow creeping closer each night. What seemed like a harmless crack in her window turned into a gaping invitation for terror. She'd often feel a strange chill in her living room, the hair on her arms tingling with warning. One evening, a neighbor noticed something odd: lights flickering, curtains drawn tight when the sun was still shining. Then, just like that, everything went dark. An icy night draped over the city, and as she pulled her blanket around her trembling frame, a loud crash shattered her fragile sense of security. Heart racing, she glanced around, her eyes searching the dark corners for movement. And there it was, a silhouette, dark and indistinguishable, frozen in her doorway. Instinctively, her mind raced with wild thoughts. Should she scream? Should she flee? Only one question lingered: what did they want? With these two eerie tales weaving the fabric of unease around us, you have to wonder, are we ever truly safe in our own homes? What dark forces circle in the quiet of night? The chilling truth is, some stories never end. What if tomorrow, you receive a knock at your door? What will you do? Will you answer? The air felt thick, electric with tension, as the night wore on. The woman, alone in her apartment, struggled to catch her breath. The silhouette standing in her doorway was not just an intruder, it was a living nightmare that had slipped into her reality, lurking where no light dared to shine. She clutched the blanket tighter around her shoulders, the warmth providing little comfort against the icy fear creeping down her spine. The figure remained still, an inky shadow against the light spilling from the adjacent room. Every instinct screamed at her to act, but confusion and sheer terror kept her frozen. They knew she was there. They had come for something. The question echoed in her mind, causing her heart to thud painfully against her ribcage: what did they want? Suddenly, without warning, it stepped forward. Her eyes widened as the figure emerged from the darkness, revealing a face she had never seen. But it wasn't the face that sent her heart racing, it was the sheer madness that danced in their eyes. There was no mistaking the hunger behind that gaze, a predatory glint that made her blood run cold. She took a shaky step back, bumping against the coffee table, sending her flashlight tumbling to the floor. The clatter cut through the silence like a scream. "Please, don't," she managed to whisper, her voice trembling, cracking under the weight of her panic. But what could she say to ward off such malice? Just as the figure lunged toward her, a blaring siren echoed through the night, its wail slicing through the air. The intruder halted, their heads snapping in the direction of the sound. A flicker of uncertainty crossed their features, a brief, precious window of time. In that moment, she seized her chance. She dashed toward the kitchen, adrenaline pumping through her veins, ignoring the pain in her shoulder as she shoved past the table, her mind raced with escape plans. The front door. The window. She had to get out. In the chaos, she grabbed a knife from the block, its cold steel reassuring against her palm. She peered back over her shoulder, they were still there, eyes blazing with wild intent. The sirens screamed louder now, a chorus of salvation and despair. But as she reached for the door, another thought settled over her, a chilling realization that turned her stomach. Maybe this was not a random attack. Maybe she was being watched long before tonight. Just then, the phone buzzed on the counter, startling her. She snatched it up, praying it was help. But as she looked at the screen, her breath caught a message from an unknown number flashed ominously. "I'm closer than you think." The words felt like icy fingers wrapping around her throat, squeezing tighter. Who sent this? She felt trapped, every sense heightened as she began to piece the puzzle together. Whoever this was, they didn't just want to break in, they wanted her. The gnawing thought tightened the grip of fear around her heart. As the sirens continued to wail, she grabbed her jacket, the weight of the knife a small comfort. She had to escape, but the dark figure was still out there, waiting. Suddenly, a knock reverberated through the apartment, loud and menacing. The sound pierced the air like an omen, drawing her attention, a mixture of dread and desperation bubbling up inside her. "Open up. This is the police." Was it real? Did she dare to trust the voice? But who would come in time to save her? Perhaps the real threat was just beginning to unfold. As she stood there, caught between the promise of safety and the reality of terror, she couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change forever. The question loomed larger than the shadows surrounding her: what would she face when she opened the door? The knock echoed again, more frantic this time, and her heart raced to join the beat. Was it really the police? Or a cruel ruse designed to draw her closer? She clenched the knife tighter, its grip digging into her palm as the tension in the room reached a boiling point. "Ma'am. We need you to open the door. Now." The voice dispatched urgency, but the words felt like ashes on her tongue. Trusting a voice unseen was a gamble she wasn't sure she could take. Every shadow in her apartment loomed large with suspicion. She took a step toward the door, hesitating. The adrenaline coursing through her veins hissed warnings like a gas leak. She couldn't risk it. Then silence. The chaos of sirens faded into the distance. Had they caught the intruder? Or was the figure still lurking, waiting for her to slip? "Please, I'm on the other side." The voice compelled, softer now, laced with concern. "I need to know you're safe." A flicker of hope surged within her. But another thought poked at her, relentless. What if her safety was an illusion? I need to confirm it's you. Show me your badge." Her voice trembled, betraying her fear. "Ma'am, this is serious. Open up, I can't stay out here long." For a split second, doubt took hold. She felt like a fool for not believing the very authority meant to protect her. But in that moment, a piercing laugh echoed hollowly through her apartment, crawling under her skin. It wasn't hers. It was a taunt, a dark reminder that someone else was in control. Thud. The sound came from the back of the apartment. Panic surged. She spun, knife raised, every nerve on fire as her instincts kicked in. Had the figure found another way in? She felt paralyzed, caught in a cycle of fear and fight. The knocking resumed, a staccato of urgency crashing against her wavering resolve. Ignoring the voice, she crept toward the kitchen, heart pounding in her ears. Shadows stretched and twisted as she approached the back door. The house felt alive, the creaks and groans echoing her mounting dread. Stopping short, her breath caught in her throat. There it was again, another sound. Soft, deliberate. Someone was moving through her place. The hair on the back of her neck prickled. There was no way she could defend herself if they closed in too quickly. Listen. The voice outside argued, growing desperate. You need to trust us. There is someone after you. Do not open the door until I say it's safe. Please. She pivoted back toward the front door, heart racing with a new uncertainty. Could they really be there to help? Surely they wouldn't lie about such a thing. But beneath that hope boiled her instincts, battling against the unknown lurking within her walls. What if this was all a trap? What if the police weren't to be trusted? And then it hit her, a realization so clear it sent a cold shiver down her spine. She had seen this face before, the look of madness in the figure's eyes reflected a twisted familiarity. Fear splashed over her like ice water. If they were after her, if they had been watching her all along, it meant that her life was not just a series of bad luck. No, who are you? She breathed. What do you want? When the voice outside remained silent, the air in the apartment thickened with dread, suffocating in its depth. Then, the back door burst open. Her heart stopped. Footsteps thundered across the floor, and at that moment, only one thought screamed in her mind. Was it truly the police who could save her, or had they been the distraction all along? The real horrors of her night were just beginning to unveil. The door swung open, flinging shadows into the room like dark fingers reaching for her. The footsteps echoed closer, ominous, and she clutched the knife tightly, knuckles white, panic-fueled adrenaline flooding her senses as she braced for an encounter that could seal her fate. Stay back! She shouted, her voice barely sounding fierce, trembling instead with fear. What are you doing? A man in a uniform burst into view, expelling air like a balloon deflating. Get behind me. He raised his hands, a glint of authority in his eyes. But something flickered across them. Was it fear? Doubt? The moment felt surreal. Was he truly there to help? Or was he part of a sinister game, his presence an added layer to this nightmare? A flicker of movement caught her eye from behind him, and her breath caught again. Please. I can't, he started, but the sudden sound of something heavy crashing in the hallway drowned out his plea. Her instincts screamed at her, urging her to run. She couldn't stay in a space that felt like it might swallow her whole. The man's presence was a fleeting security wrapped in uncertainty. Get behind me. He shouted again, eyes darting past her, scanning for danger. She hesitated, torn between the instinct to flee and the need for protection. What is happening? She gasped, straining to interpret the fear etched onto his face, but before he could respond, more figures rushed in from the shadows of her apartment. The lights flickered overhead, casting bizarre shapes on the walls as he turned to confront them, boots pounding against the wooden floor. The intruders moved like ghosts, swift and silent. One of them lunged forward, knocking the officer aside. A sickening crack echoed as his head collided with the wall, and she gasped. Help me! She shrieked, but her voice was a hoarse whisper lost in chaos. Adrenaline surged, forcing her feet to respond. She darted to the side, the kitchen knife still clutched tightly in her hand. The door was to her left, freedom just an arm's length away. But with every second, the weight of danger intensified in the air, folding around her like a suffocating shroud. Another sound erupted, a grunt followed by the thud of a body falling. It reverberated through her very bones. This wasn't just an invasion, it was carnage unfolding before her. She could see the glint of an intruder's blade, glistening with malice, poised in the chaos that seemed unending. Don't move. He barked, eyes locking onto hers with a predatory hunger. A part of her wanted to bolt, to escape down the hallway, but if she turned her back, it could be the last mistake she made. Desperation bloomed inside her, coiling tight, fueled by the fight or flight instinct that roared through her like a wildfire. "Stay away!" she cried again, voice breaking as she prepared herself. Suddenly, she caught a glimpse of another form lurking beyond the intruder, the man from outside, still conscious, struggling against two grapplers. They were closing in on him as much as they were on her. In that frantic moment, everything spun in her mind, a clear vision illuminating her reservations. This wasn't just a matter of survival, it was about deciding who deserved her trust. Then it all hit her, the fading sirens, the voice that had pleaded for her safety. What had it meant? With renewed resolve, she squared her shoulders, ready to make her choice, aware that one move would decide everything. Was it time to act, or would waiting mean her doom? But the question loomed larger and darker than before: who could she truly trust in this web of deception? The man in front of her was crumpling, and with each passing second, her resolve to stay rooted eroded like a sandcastle caught by a rising tide. The knife was heavy in her hand, a crude token of courage. Time twisted in her perception, blurring the frame of reality as she faced the predator before her. "Get away from him!" she shouted, forcing the words through her parched throat. The intruder's gaze flickered, torn between the easy prey before him and the thrashing officer behind her. A heartbeat hung in the air. "Please," the officer gasped, his voice thin, reaching for her like a child for comfort. She could tell he was losing ground. Fear shook her grip on the knife, but a wild thought surged to life: if she didn't act now, she'd be trapped in this nightmare. Decision made, she lunged forward, adrenaline scorching through her veins. The kitchen knife glinted ominously as it arced through the air. But before she could close the distance, a shadow erupted from her right, another intruder, lunging at her. She barely managed to sidestep just in time, the blade grazing past her as the force of his momentum nearly knocked her off her feet. "Stop her!" another shouted, panic slicing through the fray. The sound fractured like glass, scattering her thoughts. With no time to contemplate consequences, she turned on her heels, dashing toward the flimsy barricade of a dining table. She dove behind it, heart hammering like a jackhammer as she searched for anything, any weapon within reach. "Fight!" she told herself, breath coming fast and sharp, pulse racing to an erratic beat. A wine bottle caught her eye. She snatched it, cradling it like a grenade, hoping it could buy her a moment, maybe even create a crack in this assault. "Back off!" she yelled again, rising from her hiding place, the wine bottle raised like a shield. The intruder hesitated at the sight, his confidence faltering ever so slightly. But his hesitation lasted only a split second before he lunged. She swung the bottle blindly, the sound of shattering glass mingling with the chaotic sounds of struggle echoing through the room. It shattered against the intruder's side, sending him screaming into a frenzy, the jagged pieces of glass puncturing the darkness. Yet, within her moment of triumph came the stark reality: the other two intruders were regrouping. They had shifted into two-pronged attackers, like predators circling prey. One had managed to pry the officer from the floor, dragging him back. The sight sent icy tendrils creeping up her spine. "Let him go!" she cried, pushing her fear down deep, forcing courage to rise anew. The stranger's hand gripped the officer's collar tightly, pinning him to the wall, red-streaked with defiance. Each breath was tantalizing, yet anxiety swirled within. This was a race against an unseen clock. Or what? The heavy-set intruder taunted, cruel triumph etched on his face. "You think that glass will save him?" She was not ready to lose. With a surge of instinctive ferocity, she slashed toward the nearest figure, the wine bottle clutched in desperation. He barely sidestepped it, but that momentary distraction parted the chaotic fog just enough for her to see the front door. Time snapped back like a rubber band, and her feet propelled her toward the exit. She had to reach the door, had to escape before it was too late. But just as she reached for the knob, a shout erupted behind her, trailing her like a specter. "Don't run! It won't end here!" Panic clawed at her throat. The weight of desperation now was compounded by a nagging realization: the fears she'd faced were only the beginning. As she flung the door open, a gut-wrenching crash echoed behind her. The officer's scream filtered through the air, a haunting sound that could linger in her mind forever. She stepped into the cold night, pulse racing, breaths coming sharp and pained. But freedom was only a few steps away, or was it? She had escaped for now, but shadows loomed everywhere. Who were they, and would they follow her? Her heart raced with uncertainty as she turned back, and the chilling thought came crashing through her mind: would she ever be truly free? The icy air wrapped around her like a shroud as she stumbled away from the door, desperate to put distance between herself and the nightmare she had just escaped. But with each step, the weight of what had unfolded pressed heavier on her chest. Adrenaline still surged through her veins, but it was mixed with a terror that clawed at her mind. A shadow quivered at the corner of her vision. Her heart skipped as she spun, knife still tight in her grasp. What if they had followed her? The thought felt like a chokehold, constricting her breathing. She scanned the street, finding nothing but the flickering streetlights and the eerie silence that hung over the neighborhood. But shaking trees whispered secrets she couldn't hear. Think. She muttered to herself, forcing her trembling legs forward. She ran for the nearest house, the lights glowing invitingly from the windows. The door stood slightly ajar, as if beckoning her for sanctuary, but her instinct screamed at her: what if the intruders were already inside? A noise broke the solitude, a muffled shout from somewhere behind. They were close. Her stomach twisted, and without thinking, she lunged for the door, heart racing and fighting against the suffocating fear. She hesitated, the night sky looming over her, heavy with the weight of fate. Please, help! She gasped, hope seeping through her desperation. She pushed the door wider and stepped inside, only to find the living room empty, a dim lamp casting elongated shadows that danced along the walls. Anyone home? She whispered, but her voice felt small and fragile in the stillness. No answering call. Just the eerie familiarity of silent homes empty in the night. As she took a cautious step inside, her eyes darted over the room, searching for anything she could use, any sign of help. Her instinct screamed, this was not the safe haven she had yearned for. Every floor creak echoed like a thunderclap, reverberating through the silence around her. Suddenly, the front door slammed shut with a fierce finality that jolted her. Panic surged again. She whirled around to see a figure standing just outside the glass pane, the shadow limned by the faint glow from the streetlight. Her pulse thundered in her ears as recognition hit her heart: a face she had seen, one of the intruders. He grinned, an unsettling smile stretched across his face, eyes burning with a menacing glint. You thought you could get away that easily? Oh no, he drawled, voice smooth and chilling. It's time to play. With a sudden rush of instinct, she dashed deeper into the house, her heart pounding like a drum in her ears. The thought of running back out into the street filled her with dread, but the only other option was the tightening coil of claustrophobic fear surrounding her. She scrambled into the kitchen, pulling open drawers in frantic haste. Metal clanged, glass rattled, each sound a reminder of the imminent danger that lurked just outside. What could she find? A pan? A knife? She cursed under her breath at the hopelessness of it all. Then, just as she grabbed a heavy skillet, the entrance burst open. The intruder lunged inside, a sinewy predator with bloodlust painted on his face. She raised the pan instinctively, desperation turning to resolve. She backed away until the cool surface of the counter pressed against her back. Stay away! She yelled, her voice shaky but loud. The confidence in his grin flickered. Was it fear? Did she really have a chance? Another figure appeared behind him, flanking her like wolves closing in on their prey. They had closed in while she'd been distracted. The weight of the moment crashed down, and she felt the tide of hopelessness returning. Before she could react or scream, a loud crash echoed from the front of the house. A car engine. A siren. But were they friends or foes? Her breath held fast within her, anticipating the next movement. The door she had just fled through might still be the only way out, if only she could reach it. The stakes just grew higher, and she realized she had to decide quickly. Would she fight for her life, or would she trust in some unseen chance? In that moment, everything could change. She froze, heart pounding, a maelstrom of fear and adrenaline boiling in her chest. The figure before her was a predator, but deep within his twisted smile, she caught a flicker of hesitation. The other man, still lurking behind him, shifted slightly. Perhaps this was her moment, a sliver of doubt that she could exploit. "Get out!" She yelled again, this time louder, her voice cracking with desperation. The pan felt heavy in her hand, a small consolation amid the mounting dread. But the sound of the siren grew clearer, echoing through the air, and the intruder's grin slipped just a fraction. "Do you really think that loud noise can save you?" He sneered, advancing slowly, dominance radiating from him. "This is your last chance, sweetheart. Hand over whatever you have and maybe we can make this easy." The other man stepped closer, eyes narrowing as he eyed the skillet. They were cocky, confident in their approach, but she noticed something odd. They weren't just focused on her, they were listening. Somewhere outside, the sirens grew louder, weaving through the night, and it was almost as if they could feel the shift in the atmosphere. That tiny window of hope ignited a spark of fury within her. "Stay back!" she shouted, fury pouring through her veins like fire. Without a second thought, she lunged, swinging the skillet with every ounce of strength she had left. It was a clumsy move, but in that moment, it was all or nothing. The pan connected with a thud, a bone-jarring sound that reverberated through the kitchen. The intruder stumbled back, shock erupting across his face. A wild grin broke free on her lips. She could fight back, she would fight back, but the victory was short-lived. The other man lunged forward, grabbing her wrist with a vice-like grip. Pain shot through her arm, and she gasped, the skillet clattering to the floor. She twisted, trying to break free, her survival instincts kicking in. It was a battle of sheer will, now his strength against her resolve. "Stop struggling, you'll just make it worse," he hissed through clenched teeth. The reality of her situation crashed in again, a pulse of panic racing through her. The siren was closer now, but would it arrive in time? Would help get here before they? A sudden blast of light flooded through the small kitchen window, slicing through the shadows, blinding her momentarily. She squinted against the brightness, her heart racing as she heard the screeching tires pull up outside. Hope flickered. "It's got to be a cop. Move it." The first intruder spat, shoving her towards the rear door. "We can't be caught here." As she stumbled backward, the fierce grip on her wrist faltered. The second intruder, distracted by the commotion outside, let go just long enough for her to break free. With a rush of adrenaline, she turned without thinking, feet moving before her mind could catch up. The back door loomed ahead if she could just make it out. She raced for it, heart pounding, desperation pushing her faster. "Get her!" someone shouted, the urgency fueling her flight. She burst through the back door, the cool night air hitting her hard, and she felt a glimmer of freedom. But the ground ahead was uneven, a small fence blocking her escape. She leapt over it, adrenaline driving her forward, the distant swirls of sirens still pulsing behind her. Suddenly, behind her, she heard a crash, the front door splintering under a foot. Help was here, but the intruders were still on her tail. There was no time to look back. She ran, her lungs burning, a singular thought racing through her mind: would she make it? The weight of what was pursuing her raced after, intrusive thoughts blurring her vision until all that existed was the need to break free. She needed help, just a few more steps, but what lay ahead in the darkness? As she burst through the alleyway, another sound sliced through the air, a scream, shrill and piercing, echoing against the walls as the nightmare surged back into the labyrinth of her mind. Did the sirens even register through the chaos? Would she outrun the shadows creeping behind, or would they catch up to claim her before dawn? Her breath hitched, uncertainty loomed just as heavily as fear. How much longer could she evade their grasp? Each passing moment felt like a death sentence, and the night still had its secrets waiting to unravel. What if she wasn't the only one trapped in this web of terror? She dashed through the alley, the the smell of damp concrete and trash filling her nostrils. The sound of her heartbeat thundered in her ears, almost drowning out the chaos behind her. She could still hear the shouts, the heavy footfalls. Danger was closing in. With every breath, the panic surged higher inside her. Suddenly, the scream echoed in her mind again. Was it just a figment of her fear or something more? The thought sent a chill down her spine. She needed to focus. She glanced to her right, looking for a way to escape. The winding alleyway offered little in the way of refuge, just a dark pull that seemed to breathe danger. A little further ahead, she spotted a small door set into the side of an old building, its frame battered and barely hanging on its hinges. It was an opportunity. With hope lighting her path, she sprinted toward it, her hand already reaching for the handle. The metal was cold under her palm, and she yanked it open with all her might. She stumbled inside, the overwhelming hush of darkness swallowing her whole. The door creaked shut behind her, sealing her in silence and shadows. She pressed herself against the cool wall, willing her breath to slow, but her heart raced on, wild and frantic, like the sound of a drum long lost to reason. As her eyes adjusted to the dim light, she realized she stood in what looked like an old storage room. Shadows danced upon the walls, and an unsettling sense of abandonment hung in the air. Think, she urged herself, her mind racing. There had to be something she could use, something to keep those intruders away if they found her. She squinted into the darkness, spotting a pile of boxes near the far corner. Clenching her fists, she made her way toward them, each step muted by the layer of dust beneath her feet. Before she could reach the boxes, another scream echoed from outside, more despair-laden than the last. It sent a jolt through her, a rasp of desperation that settled like ash in her stomach. Was it the same person from before? Was it someone else? She shoved the thought aside, forcing herself to look through the boxes, hoping for anything she could use as a weapon or defense. Her fingers brushed against the rough cardboard until they landed on something solid, maybe a baseball bat or a pipe. No, it was an old flashlight, and it illuminated with a flicker at her command. Thank God, she whispered, relief washing over her for a brief moment. But just as quickly, her heart dropped as she heard footsteps heavy and slow. They were getting closer. She pressed her back against the wall, trying to make herself invisible, every nerve ending vibrating with fear. The rhythmic sound grew louder, sending panic ricocheting through her veins. Then, right outside the door, she heard a familiar voice. "Simon, we know you're in here. You can't stay hidden forever." Her heart sank. They were hunting her, like prey to a predator. She thought of the sirens, of the officers who had rushed to her home, but how long had it been since they arrived? Would they even come looking for her here? In desperation, she stepped back, searching for a place to hide in the cramped quarters. Should she crouch behind the boxes or risk being spotted? The beam of her flashlight cast eerie shapes in the dark, making every shadow seem foreboding. Where did she go? The voice outside taunted. Just come out. We'll let you leave, promise. Her throat tightened. She couldn't trust them. They were liars and probably dangerous. But what choice did she have? The room was closing in around her, the shadows growing thicker. Taking a deep breath, she stifled her dread, heart racing like an engine on overdrive. Then, as if sensing the weight of her silence, the door creaked open. A figure loomed in the doorway, silhouetted against the fading light. Panic surged anew as she realized this was not just a fight for her safety, it was a fight for her life. That in a split second, she had to decide, stay hidden, or show herself and risk everything. As she held her breath, trembling in the darkness, she felt a terrifying truth tighten around her heart. Somewhere in this nightmare, help had come, but would it be in time to save her or to seal her fate? Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat blurring the line between fear and instinct. The figure at the door stood still, almost expectant, as if waiting for her to make that critical choice. She could feel the chill creep up her spine, igniting every survival instinct she possessed. Show yourself. The voice demanded, laced with menace. Now. Against her better judgment, she shifted her weight, edging deeper into the shadows. The light of her flashlight flickered uncertainly, mimicking her frayed nerves. She couldn't let them see her, not yet. From her cramped corner, she caught sight of the intruder more clearly. A tall man, his face obscured by the dim light, loomed large in the doorway. The tension in the air crackled as he took a step inside, his footfalls deliberate and chilling. "You've got nowhere to run," he called out, a grin spreading across his face that sent dread pooling in her stomach. "This will be over soon enough." With him now closer, she could hear the faint sound of heavy breathing mingled with an unsettling calm. It was as if he thrived on the fear he instilled in his prey. Her fingers gripped the flashlight tighter, the cool metal biting into her skin as she prepared for whatever would come next. Suddenly, the other voice chimed in from outside the building. "What were you doing in there? Grab her. You want to find out what she knows." A veil lifted slightly. They weren't just looking for her, they wanted information. That thought sent fresh waves of terror crashing over her. What did they think she knew? And why hunt her down like this? In a split second of clarity, she realized she didn't just have to survive for herself, there was a chance she could help someone else who was out there. A sense of purpose coursed through her veins as she weighed her options. She could stay hidden and play the waiting game, or she could use the flashlight as a distraction. A moment of brilliance sparked in her mind, she could create a diversion. Pushing herself off the wall with resolve, she shifted the flashlight to her other hand. As quietly as she could, she turned it off, plunging herself once again into murky darkness. The intruder tilted his head, confused. What the hell? Did she go out the other door? The second voice shouted, panic creeping into their tone. Seizing the chaos outside, she aimed the flashlight toward a stack of old, rusty tools that lay nearby. With a forceful kick, she sent them crashing to the floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot through the silence, punctuating the tension with chaotic urgency. "Go check that." The intruder barked at his partner. She had only seconds, but it was all she needed. With everything in her screaming for action, she darted past the man in the doorway, pushing her weight against him. "Stop!" he shouted, but she was already sprinting through the darkened space, the stale air burning her lungs. The moment she broke outside, a frenzy of light rushed over her from flashlights wielded by the remaining figures. They swarmed, but she didn't slow, heart pounding like a drum. She dashed toward the shadows of the next building, mind racing. There had to be a way out of this nightmare. Where was the street? Where could she find help? Behind her, the footsteps grew louder, their jeers fueling her adrenaline. "You can't escape. We know this place like the back of our hands." She fled with every ounce of determination, straining to grab at the surrounding surreal night and keeping her thoughts on escape. But the fear gripped her tighter than any chains, an unseen anchor dragging her into the suffocating depths of uncertainty and dread. Just when she thought she spotted an exit, a cold hand reached out, grabbing her wrist tightly. "Found you!" it growled, and her pulse quickened with the sickening realization that she was far from free. She had one desperate chance left. As she twisted with all her might, she caught sight of something glinting in the moonlight nearby, a chance, perhaps, to turn the tables. What was it? A weapon? Or salvation? The answer was racing forward, but would it be enough to turn her fate around or lead her deeper into peril? In the pitch-black solitude of the storage room, her heart beat like a war drum, each thud a frantic plea for survival. As she scrambled out, an overwhelming rush of adrenaline fueled her flight. The distant sirens had faded, replaced by the sound of heavy footsteps pounding closer. "Keep running," she urged herself, mind racing. She could barely fathom how high the stakes were, how fleeting her safety felt. Behind her, they were relentless, dark figures honed in on their prey. The pressure in her chest tightened and the shadows danced as she sprinted, keeping fear from consuming her. She slipped around a corner, spotting a chain-link fence up ahead. If she could just reach it, she could scale it and lose them in the maze of streets beyond. Desperation coursed through her veins as she reached the gate, but it was locked. No time. She climbed, fingers clawing at the metal, thoughts swirling chaotically. What if they caught up? With a heave, she cleared the top and rolled down awkwardly on the other side, landing hard on the asphalt ground, a jolt of pain shooting through her shoulder. Still, she pushed herself up, forcing her legs to move with every ounce of energy she had left. Escape became her only focus. A piercing scream sliced through the night air, a fresh reminder of the dark reality that pursued her. She couldn't look back, she wouldn't allow that fear to catch her. It would whisper lies that would paralyze her. She continued forward, a bright light flickering in the distance giving her hope. Was it help? The thought ignited strength within her, the chance to escape the nightmare that had become her life. Just ahead, she saw a small diner, its neon sign buzzing like a beacon of hope. She dashed for it, heart pounding as she burst through the door. Stumbling inside, she gasped for breath, wild eyes scanning the room. The few patrons turned, startled, confused by the image of a disheveled woman in a frenzy, eyes wide with panic. "Help! Someone's after me!" she shouted, desperation twisting her voice. The warm interior felt suddenly welcoming, but fear loomed large in the back of her mind. She turned, glancing out the window to see if they were following. An older waitress approached, concern etched across her face. "Honey, what's going on?" She opened her mouth to explain, but then the door swung wide, and the chilling figures of the intruders filled the frame, eyes glinting with malicious intent. "There she is!" one of them shouted, loud and dangerously confident. Time almost froze. "No!" she screamed, adrenaline propelling her back towards the kitchen, every instinct screaming to find safety. Without thinking, she grabbed a nearby heavy skillet from the counter as the sound of chaos erupted behind her. The smell of grease and urgency mixed in the air, the sense of impending danger wrapping around her like a vice. "Get back!" she warned as the intruders stormed through the diner, chaos erupting. Patrons scrambled from their seats, panic weaving through the small space, chairs scraping against the floor in a cacophony of fright. "Identify yourself. What do you want?" the waitress called out, courage overwhelming her instinct to flee. She was poised under pressure, filling the role of protector. The intruders paused, momentarily caught off guard by her bravery, but it didn't last long. "Give us her now," their leader commanded, advancing with a predatory grin. The room buzzed with tension. The waitress shot her a look, and for the first time, she felt a flicker of solidarity. She wasn't alone. "Get down!" the waitress yelled, and just then, a loud crash sounded as the diner's door flung open, police officers flooding inside. "Freeze!" one shouted, authority ringing through the commotion, the fear of imminent danger replaced by the resolve of law. Survival hinged on a knife's edge as chaos erupted anew. The intruders fumbled, realizing their game was up. They glanced at each other, unsure, before their leader lunged one last time, but the officers were ready. "Down! Get on the ground!" The barrage of commands echoed as handcuffs clicked shut. And a wild sense of relief washed over her. There was no more running, the nightmare was over. As they subdued the intruders, her legs finally gave way, and she leaned heavily against the counter, breathing hard. The familiar scent of frying food mixed with relief and the palpable tension of the night melted away, and tears pricked at her eyes. She had done it, she had survived. Days later, the scars of that night still echoed, even as she sat in a park, surrounded by sunlit trees and laughter. A newfound appreciation for safety enveloped her, but the memories remained sharp, haunting. She held the reflection of that darkness in her heart, but she would also carry the light she found when she thought all was lost. The waitress visited her. They shared stories, laughter easing the tension, connecting over the horror they had faced together. The officer came too, checking up and assuring her she would be safe. She had faced darkness but discovered strength and community that made her feel alive again. As the sun dipped in the sky, painting everything in hues of hope, she realized she would never forget, but she would be okay. And that was enough. Now, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss any exclusive stories that could ignite your curiosity. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, keeping our community alive and thriving. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. I want to hear your thoughts, and please, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share this story. True fans like you know how important it is.